5 is this weekend. I'm going to give you a prediction breakdown of all 13 fights on this card, starting with the first matchup of Denis Buzukja versus Jamall Emmers. I am going to go with Jamall Emmers. I think he's actually a pretty talented fighter over Denis Buzukja in this matchup. Denis Buzukja has been in the UFC at least a couple times, or at least associated with the UFC. I think he was on the Contender Series once or twice. Yeah, he lost to Melsik Bagdasaryan on the Contender Series by decision, and then won against Cateo Romero in the 2022 Contender Series, and then ended up not getting chosen there. Then going on to make his UFC debut, finally making it to the UFC, I guess, on his third try. So I think it was a short notice matchup. I'm not completely sure. It has been quite a while since this matchup happened, but he did lose to Sean Woodson by decision. Sean Woodson isn't bad. I think Sean Woodson beat Terrence McKinney, if that has any value at this point anymore. But Denis Buzukja, a very solid fighter, but Jamall Emmers made it pretty close with Jack Jenkins. I think Jack Jenkins is probably, as an unranked fighter, probably one of those higher level unranked fighters, and I think that says quite a bit. So I think Jamall Emmers, even though 34 years of age, I think still has quite a bit in him in this matchup against Denis Buzukja. So I'm going to take him by decision. I don't know if he gets the finish, but again, I'll just rely on a decision this one. I think Emmers is just going to be a little bit too much on the feet for this matchup. 78% picked by Emmers, for Emmers, sorry, 85% by decision, 22% picked for Buzukja in this matchup. Up the card, we have Joshua Van versus Kevin Borjas. I am going to go with Joshua Van. He actually looked pretty good on his UFC debut against Zhalgas Zhumagulov, and Zhalgas is actually a pretty decent fighter. I know he's had some rough decisions, but I think he kind of got favored a little bit in this decision. I thought Joshua Van had a pretty good performance. Kevin Borjas, in case you didn't know, was probably my best pick on the series of Contender Series. There was a lot of underdogs on the Contender Series, but towards the end it started falling off my picks at least. So a lot of favorites did end up losing on the Contender Series, but Kevin Borjas, week one, my guy, helped me come in clutch there with a pretty good underdog pick. I think it was like plus 400 or whatever, but Kevin Borjas is solid, but I think Joshua Van is just going to be a very good fighter, only 22 years of age as well, and beat Zhalgas Zhumagulov, I thought, relatively clearly. I'm surprised it did go to a split decision. Poor Zhalgas Zhumagulov got the patty hair just to get that decision, and then he got it to a split decision, but didn't end up getting it. So, but I am going to go with Joshua Van here. I think he just outstrikes him on the feet. I don't know if he gets the finish, but again, I think this might be a pretty decently high-level fight. So should be a very entertaining one. A lot of the lower weight class fighters normally put on pretty entertaining fights, especially at flyweight, bantamweight. So we'll see how this one goes. I am going to pick Joshua Van, though. 89% picked by Tapology, 11% picked for Borjas. I'm going to stick with Van by decision. Off the card, we have Kang versus John Castañeda. I know I just absolutely messed up his name. Kang versus John Castañeda. I am going to go with John Castañeda in this one. I'm going to stick with him here. 31 years of age, almost 32 years of age. But Kang just turned 36. I know he had a good performance against Christian Quinones, but I kind of had Christian Quinones pretty highly ranked in my brain. Not highly ranked like he's going to be top 15 or whatever, but I rated him a little bit. But his performance, I mean, you kind of just got to go off of performances at this point at bantamweight, because bantamweight is extremely competitive. But Christian Quinones did not look that great in that fight. I know Kang actually looked very good. It's probably his best performance to date, but he hasn't been super active in the UFC. Like, he lost to Ronnie Yaya. I know it was like a year and 8 months ago, but how good is that to have on your record? I know John Castañeda beat Muin Gafurov, which honestly isn't that bad of a win to have. I think it's a pretty decent win. I don't think Muin Gafurov's like some kind of world beater, but he is decent at least. Lost to Daniel Santos, had a couple moments, and then Daniel Santos just kind of turned it on as a Oliveira guy. So beat Miles Johns by submission. I'm just gonna go with John Castañeda in this one. I don't think he finishes him. I think this one goes to a decision. I can see this one being 29-28. But Kang being 36 in the bantamweight division is kind of a red flag for me. I think a lot of these older guys tend to be lower on the rank scale, and I know this is not, well, it's not official rankings, but you know what I mean. Like, it's outside the rankings. I guess that's kind of where they would be at if you are older. I know Dominic Cruz is still in the top 10, but he's not really fighting. I know same thing with Pedro Munoz, but I mean, he does have a chance to win this one. Kang actually was pretty decent in his last fight, but I think John Castañeda is just a different step up in competition. I kind of want to see what Kang looks like in this matchup. 2 inches of reach as an advantage in this one. I don't know. I don't trust him yet. Maybe after this one, if he puts on another good performance, I'll trust him a little bit more. It kind of depends on his opponent, but I'm going to have to stick with John Castañeda here by decision. I think 29-28 decision is going to be super close, pretty even on the Tapology numbers here. 57% for Kang, 43% for Castañeda. I think Castañeda just does a little bit better on the feet, mixes in takedowns a little bit more. I know Kang got that submission. The jiu-jitsu is going to be looking decent there, but I think we can see John Castañeda mix up his game a little bit more here, and I think he does pretty well. So let's move on. Up the card, we have Jared Gordon versus Mark Madsen. I am going to go with Jared Gordon in this matchup. His last fight, was 5 months ago? Was he actually scheduled for another fight? I can't remember. I think he wasn't he? Oh, yeah, Jim Miller, and that fight ended up not happening. I can't remember exactly what it was, but that Bobby Green fight ended up losing that one, or I guess it was an accidental clash of heads, but he was actually winning that entire fight on the feet so far. And so far in that matchup, I think it was like the entire first round, it looked like Jared Gordon was completely outstriking Bobby Green on the feet. It was a little bit competitive, but I just think Jared Gordon actually looked a lot better in that fight than I was expecting him to. I think I picked Bobby Green in that fight, especially with how Bobby Green has looked recently. I thought that was actually a pretty impressive performance for Jared Gordon. Mark Madsen coming off a loss against Grant Dawson about a year ago, almost 40 years of age at lightweight. I don't like this matchup for Mark Madsen. I know he's an Olympian, all that kind of thing. I'm going to go with Jared Gordon. I mean, he's looked decent, good on the feet. I mean, if you're able to get the best of the striking, no matter what round, I guess, of Bobby Green. I know Bobby Green's an older fighter as well. I just don't think Mark Madsen's that great. I'm going to be completely honest. Like, he beat Vince Pichel a year and a half ago by decision. Clay Guida, split decision win. Austin Hubbard decision win. I don't know, man. I'm going to go with Jared Gordon by decision. I don't think he gets the finish. It is pretty 50-50 on the Tapology. I don't know. I thought Jared Gordon looked pretty good in that last matchup against Bobby Green, but it's the UFC at this point. 4 inches of reach advantage of Madsen. Jared Gordon's going to be better on the feet, and I think he can hang in there in the grappling position. So I'm going to go Gordon by decision. 45% picked by Tapology, 55% picked for Madsen there. Let's move on. Up the card, we have Nazim Sadykhov versus Viacheslav Borshchev. Borshchev cannot catch a break, can he? I mean, Nazim Sadykhov is a pretty good fighter. I mean, he trains with the Frevolas, the Marab, Aljo. So he has a pretty good base in the wrestling, but he's also very, very technically sound on the feet. And I think he can do very good in this matchup. He made it relatively competitive with Evan Elder. I thought Evan Elder was winning that fight until he got the big cut on his face that had to get it stopped. So he got away with that one, but ended up finishing Terrence McKinney by submission, which is actually pretty impressive in your second fight. And I think he's going to be able to take advantage of Borshchev on the ground here. Borshchev is not very good on the ground. He fought Mark Dekaji, decision loss there. Mike Davis, who's actually really good too. Mark Dekaji is actually a pretty highly ranked, unranked guy. So I think he's just gotten some unlucky matchups. Like, he beat Dakota Bush by KO, beat Mahashate by KO. So, like, he's looked good with these guys that are stand-up fighters. But, man, when you start mixing it in on Borshchev, it's going to get a little bit rough. I don't mind Nazim Sadykhov by submission, but I think Borshchev might be able to be defensively sound on the ground by, like, in areas of the submission, in the grappling. I think he's going to be pretty sound defensively. Maybe he does end up getting submitted, but I can see this one also going to decision. That's kind of how Tapology has it too. 82% picked for Sadykhov here, 28% by decision, 48% by submission. I don't think he KOs Borshchev. I think that's going to be a little bit wild there. I think Borshchev is really, really good on the feet. I can't see him getting KO'd. But Mike Davis couldn't KO you. I don't think that's going to happen for Sadykhov. But who knows? Sadykhov could be some crazy fighter that we haven't seen yet. Like, he is still pretty young, so we could see him start to advance a little bit more in his career. But again, it's going to be a submission or decision in my brain. I don't know what round. If it is going to be a submission, maybe like a second round or something like that. But I think this probably will be a decision. 29-28 maybe for the most for Borshchev. I can see this also being 30-27, but Borshchev can definitely make this a little bit more competitive on the feet. We'll see how this one goes, but I'm going to go with Nazim Sadykhov by decision. Up the card, we have Tabatha Ricci versus Lupi Godinez. I think I am going to stick with Tabatha Ricci for this matchup. I think Lupi Godinez is a really good wrestler, very strong as well, pretty stocky fighter, but I think Tabatha Ricci is a more balanced fighter. I think she's pretty good on the feet. It's women's MMA. She's actually pretty solid on the feet. Her performances actually have been looking pretty good. Beat Jillian Robertson by decision, which is pretty impressive. Jillian Robertson I think has the most submissions in strawweight history or whatever it is. I don't know the exact statistic, but she's actually pretty good on the ground. Beat Jessica Penne by submission as well. Like, these aren't crazy wins because they're not ranked wins, But I just, Tabatha Ricci is just a very balanced fighter. I think she can do some good work against Lupita Godinez on the feet. Lupita Godinez isn't a great fighter on feet. Like you saw someone like Angela Hill. I know Angela Hill is probably a little bit more, I don't know how to describe this. She's been in the game for a long time, so she's a veteran. I know she's 13-12, but she's actually put on some decently competitive performances. And Lupita Godinez was not able to take advantage of Angela Hill in the wrestling or anything like that. She was able to keep it on the feet. So I think Tabatha Ricci can do the same. I think Ricci's stand-up game is a lot better than Lupita Godinez. I can see this one going to a decision as well. 63% picked for Tapology. Ricci is 37% picked for Godinez. I am going to go Ricci by a 30-27 decision. I think she just completely outstrikes Lupita Godinez. I don't think Lupi has anything for her super crazy on the ground in terms of like submissions or anything like that. If anything, she tries to take her down. I think Ricci can stuff it. So up the card, we have Mateusz Rębecki versus Roosevelt Roberts. I'm going to go with Mateusz Rębecki. I believe this fight is on short notice as well for Roosevelt Roberts. I can't remember who fell out. Yeah, it was Narulo Aliyev. So that fight was actually going to be a pretty good fight to watch. It's actually unfortunate we don't get that one. But Roosevelt Roberts on the Ultimate Fighter, firmly in the UFC as well. Pretty well known for getting spinning back kicked against Ignacio Bahamondes. That was a pretty nasty KO that he was on the other side of, but he was on tough. He was actually my pick to win the season or the show. He didn't end up winning. I think it was like him and Austin Hubbard or whatever. They were friends or something like that, and he ended up losing. It was a pretty close decision from what I remember, but Mateusz Rębecki is a pretty good fighter. Like, he's good on the ground, good on the feet. I think when I chose Loic Radzhabov, I mean, he just, from what I remember, he just completely destroyed his leg. Couldn't really do much on the feet. I thought Loic Radzhabov would be a little bit more on the ground, but it just seemed like he kind of just gassed out, didn't have much in him. But Mateusz Rębecki's pressure is one thing to look out for in this matchup. And now on short notice for Roosevelt Roberts, it definitely is a pretty good opportunity for him. He's actually a very solid fighter on the ground and on the feet. But we'll see how he does here. I think Rębecki's pressure, especially on a short notice fighter for Roosevelt Roberts, I don't think is going to be helpful for him at all. So I'm going to go with Mateusz Rębecki. People are saying by KO. I don't mind him catching Roberts maybe in like the second or third round on the chin and then finishing him up with TKO strikes. I think Rębecki's a pretty strong dude as well. Has looked pretty impressive in the UFC so far, just performance-wise. I know Nick Fiore is not that great of a win to have. Loic Radzhabov isn't a crazy win to have. I mean, he's a decent fighter, but nothing crazy. He hasn't had that super big performance yet. I think Narulo Aliyev performance probably would have shown quite a bit out of both of the guys, which, again, is pretty annoying we don't get that. But from what I remember, Aliyev is actually injured. Is going to be out for a while. So I am going to go Rębecki, probably by TK on the second round. I think he catches Roosevelt Roberts just by pressuring him. Probably just pressures him. Roosevelt Roberts tries to circle out and then just ends up getting caught with like a right or left hook. So up the card, we have Steve Erceg versus Alessandro Costa. From what I remember, actually not from what I remember, because I'm actually going to look it up right now. He's supposed to fight Matt Schnell, who's also a ranked fighter. So Steve Erceg made his UFC debut against David Dvorak, who is a ranked fighter, ended up beating him by decision. Was a pretty impressive performance. I think Steve Erceg was coming in on short notice as well, so it was a pretty good opportunity. I was actually thinking about picking him. I was pretty mad that I didn't end up picking him in that fight. But Alessandro Costa, for a guy on short notice, is actually a pretty dangerous fighter. You saw him in that first round against Amir Albazi make it actually pretty competitive. So I think this is not going to be an easy fight for Steve Erceg, without a doubt. Alessandro Costa is a very competitive fighter. Beat Jimmy Flick by KO as well, which is a pretty good win to have on his record, or at least as an unranked fighter, pretty decent win to have there. Only 27 years of age as well, so he's going to keep getting better. But Steve Erceg, I think as of right now, 28 years of age, already beat a ranked fighter, was going to fight Matt Schnell and probably could have done decent in that fight. We haven't seen too much of Steve Erceg. We've seen him in 3 rounds on short notice. Let's see what he looks like on a camp against a dangerous guy in Alessandro Costa. But I think Steve Erceg wins this one by decision. I think Alessandro Costa is a pretty durable guy, pretty decently balanced, but I think Steve Erceg can definitely do at least mix in the takedowns and stay on the feet and completely outstrike Costa on the feet here. So I'm going to go with Steve Erceg by decision, 86% picked by Tapology, 77% by decision, 14% picked for Costa in this matchup. I am going to go with Erceg by decision. Up the card, we have Pat Sabatini versus Diego Lopes. And what I find absolutely insane is that Diego Lopes is actually the underdog in this fight. So if you got money to spare, I think this is probably going to be like one of the best underdogs on the card. I'm going to be completely honest. Pat Sabatini is a very solid fighter. Like he's a very good fighter, but I think the thing holding him back is his striking's not crazy good. It doesn't even have to be crazy good. Well, what I'll just say is his striking isn't great. I'll put it that way. Like it's decent, but it's not great. His chin isn't the best either. I think Diego Lopes, who's a very good guy on the ground, trains actually a lot of those Mexican fighters. You see him cornering like a Moreno. I think he was cornering Aldana, Grasso, main training partners for them on the ground for like jiu-jitsu coach. I think he's their jiu-jitsu coach or something like that in their corners or whatever. But Diego Lopes is starting to make his rounds in the MMA space, I guess. So Diego Lopes actually making his debut against Movsar Evloev, had a pretty decent performance there, at least for a guy who lost. Came out of that fight looking pretty decent. Movsar Evloev, not so much. I mean, he got the win, had a pretty good, I think from what I remember, like a second or third round. But Diego Lopes put him in some pretty rough positions on the ground, and like I think he had a knee bar or something like that a couple times. So he actually had chances to win the fight, except for Movsar Evloev was a pretty tough fighter. So ended up beating Gavin Tucker by submission. Thing is, Pat Sabatini's going to be looking to take you down. I don't think he's going to be able to do that to Diego Lopes, and if he does, Diego Lopes is very good on the ground as well. So I think, if anything, if he does end up getting taken down, or if he like wants to go to the ground with Pat Sabatini, just like pull his guard or something like that, I think it's going to be a very dangerous position for Sabatini in this matchup. And I think Sabatini's chin isn't the best either. I think Diego Lopes can definitely outstrike him and catch him on the chin. I think this fight ends in the first round. There's going to be a lot of hype around it. Is this the opening fight on the main card? It is. So he's going to have a hot crowd with him at MSG. I think Diego Lopes wins this one on the feet, catches Pat Sabatini, maybe hops on a submission on the ground, or probably wins this one by TKO strikes in the first round. So I'm going to go with Diego Lopes by finish in the first. Not sure if it's going to be by submission or TKO. Maybe you can comfortably say like submission, maybe he hops on like a guillotine, like he drops him onto a knee, gets on the guillotine and just hops on it and finishes them that way, rolls over to the back, gets a rear naked choke. I don't know. It could go a plethora of ways, but you can just see him catching Sabatini. Sabatini gets dropped and then beating him up on the ground, winning by TKO or getting the submission. So first round finish for Diego Lopes in this one. Up the card, you have Matt Frevola versus Benoit Saint-Denis. I'm going to go with Matt Frevola in this one. I think his power is extremely lethal. Like you saw what he's able to do to Drew Dober. Like no one was able to KO Drew Dober. I think the last time Drew Dober has been like finished like that was years and years and years ago, like towards the start of his career. So no one has been able to do that to Drew Dober. Like his power is absolutely insane, and he trains with guys like Merab and Aljamain Sterling. I know they're lower division fighters, but just having that high level grappling in the room is definitely going to be beneficial for a guy like Matt Frevola against a guy in Benoit Saint-Denis who has some very, very, very good wrestling and then can get this fight to the ground. I don't know. I'm not too crazy about his stand-up. Like, his stand-up is actually pretty decent, Benoit Saint-Denis's is. But when it comes to him versus Matt Frevola can definitely catch him and hurt him pretty badly. I'm not going to compare this fight to the Alezu Zaleski fight, where Alezu Zaleski's actually pretty good on the feet and on the ground, like really good at stuffing the takedowns, which really gave Benoit Saint-Denis a lot of trouble. But I can definitely see Matt Frevola catching Benoit Saint-Denis early, rocking him pretty badly and getting the finish in like the second round here. I think Matt Frevola is definitely a very good underdog. It is more of like a 50-50 fight in my mind. I think a lot of people might actually pick Benoit Saint-Denis. By KO, I think might be a little crazy here, but Terrence McKinney got the finish in like 8 seconds. Arman Tsarukyan got the decision win. I don't know, man. I think Matt Frevola can catch him here, and I think get the finish and the late first round. I'll say Benoit Saint-Denis is a super tough guy, so I could just be super wrong here. He's 28 years of age as well. Matt Frevola is 33, but I think a lot of people are going off that KO kind of thing with that Terrence McKinney 8-second fight, and you haven't seen him get chin like that before. Like, he took shots off of Zaitar, took shots off of Drew Dober. I think he can take shots off of Benoit Saint-Denis. I don't think Benoit Saint-Denis is a better stand-up fighter than these two guys. So I'm going to go with Matt Frevola here. I think he can finish Benoit Saint-Denis, kind of just hold off the takedowns very early on after he catches them, and I think he can win this fight. But again, both of these guys can definitely win. Like, Benoit Saint-Denis is definitely a favorite for a reason, but I think Matt Frevola power is just going to be a little bit too much for Benoit Saint-Denis here. So I'm going to go Frevola by KO in the first or second round. Probably the first round, honestly. I can see that's where he wins this because the more opportunity for Benoit Saint-Denis is probably going to be really rough for Matt Frevola because it's going to give him more chances to get the takedowns. And Benoit Saint-Denis is a very tough dude, very strong. So I can see why a lot of people are picking him here, but I am going to stick with Matt Frevola by finish in the late first round, maybe second round TKO win for Matt Frevola. Benoit Saint-Denis is 76% picked by Tapology, 66% by KO. I think is a little insane in my mind, but I guess he finished Thiago Moises on the ground. Ismael Bonfim, he actually did decent early on in that fight and then ended up getting the submission on the ground, which is pretty impressive against a Bonfim brother. But I don't know, man. I'm going to go with Matt Frevola. I think he can end up catching Benoit Saint-Denis and getting that finish in the late part of that first round. So let's move on. Up the card, we have Jessica Andrade versus Mackenzie Dern, and I've been pretty 50-50 on this fight. I don't know who I'm going to go with. Jessica Andrade is a very short, stocky fighter. She doesn't have the best takedown defense. She's not that great on the ground either. Like, 2 of her last 3 fights have been against wrestlers. Erin Blanchfield, that fight was on short notice. So I mean, she had the training camp, but Erin Blanchfield, I believe. Oh no, actually, I think she came on short notice. Ended up getting submitted by Erin Blanchfield. Ended up getting submitted against Tatiana Suarez, and then finished by KO against Jian Zhaonan. Mackenzie Dern coming off a pretty good performance against Angela Hill, but here's the thing. Mackenzie Dern doesn't have as great of wrestling, and like if we're grading wrestling, and you say Erin Blanchfield, Tatiana Suarez, and Mackenzie Dern, how are you gonna rate them? You're probably gonna put Tatiana Suarez and Erin Blanchfield up there, and then Mackenzie Dern a little bit down because she's more of a grappling focused fighter. Like, she's more jiu-jitsu. She's gonna be looking for wizards. Tatiana Suarez is gonna be looking for single legs, like she did against Jessica Andrade. Like, looking for double legs, looking for actual wrestling and that's kind of how she finished Andrade too. Andrade was working her way up, was kind of in a headlock, and then ended up getting the guillotine as well. So I don't know, the entries of Mackenzie Dern is not as clean as a Tatiana Suarez or a Erin Blanchfield. I think if anything, Mackenzie Dern could probably get her down using the wizard, but Mackenzie Dern is just so open on the feet. It's very rough to see, and I think Andrade can definitely catch her in this fight. But at this point in Andrade's career, where do we rate her at this? She's on a 3-fight losing streak. Mackenzie Dern is actually fighting a pretty decently ranked fighter at this point. I know she's number 5, but she beat Angela Hill. Was she even ranked at that point? I don't think she was even ranked. Lost to Yan Zhaonan by decision, majority decision. So it was a pretty close fight, actually, from what I remember. It actually was pretty close. Oh, screw it. Mackenzie Dern's pretty durable. I don't think Andrade is going to be able to catch Dern, kind of like how Yan Zhaonan is, or at least was. Yeah, I'm going to go with Mackenzie Dern. I think she uses a clinch, kind of tips over Andrade a little bit more. Andrade actually had decent defense against Tatiana Suarez, worked her way up a couple times, even at her detriment. But again, I just think she doesn't have the best IQ on the ground, and I think she just find her in a really bad position on the ground. So I'm going to go with Mackenzie Dern. I'm going to be punching myself if Jessica Andrade ends up winning this fight, but I think Mackenzie Dern, even though it's very bad defensively on the feet, she's pretty tough, has a good chin. Her power has actually been looking a lot better, like the way she's throwing punches. She was able to catch Angela Hill, and it looks like there has been a little bit more pop in her shots, even though and the punches do look a little bit better. I will say that just a little bit, but defensively it's not very good to see, especially if you want to predict her, but very good on the ground. I can see her getting into the clinch and kind of just tipping over Andrade, and then maybe getting the submission on the ground, maybe even catching her on the feet and then getting the submission on the ground. But I think Mackenzie Dern probably wins this one in the first or second round, a super late first or second round in this fight. So we'll see how this one goes. 81% picked by Tapology for Dern, 65% by submission. I'm going to go with Mackenzie Dern by submission. Card, we have Sergei Pavlovich versus Tom Aspinall in our co-main event for the interim UFC Heavyweight Championship. I actually did an early prediction breakdown of this fight. I think a week ago or whatever, or 2 weeks ago. However weeks ago it was when this fight ended up getting announced, and I am going to stick with my prediction here of Tom Aspinall by finish. I do really like Sergei Pavlovich. He is probably my favorite heavyweight at this point in that division because he's just super entertaining to watch. The range, the way he fights with the range he has, and the speed is actually pretty impressive. 84 inches of reach is actually insane. We'll have a 6-inch reach advantage over Tom Aspinall. But I think Tom Aspinall down the middle, down the pipe, is going to be able to touch up Sergei Pavlovich. I think it's going to be relatively competitive here, but I think Sergei Pavlovich is going to get touched up early on and then get taken down by Tom Aspinall. I do not believe in that takedown defense of Sergei Pavlovich. I know he did defend the takedown of Curtis Blades, but I mean, Curtis Blades couldn't take down Derek Lewis. He did try it before. He ended up getting KO'd. He couldn't take him down, and when he did get cracked, it was the only time that Sergei Pavlovich actually stuffed the takedown was when Curtis Blades was hurt. So, I mean, Curtis Blades didn't shoot for it beforehand because he felt comfortable on the feet. But again, he was able to defend the takedown in my mind because Curtis Blades was hurt, and it was kind of a sloppy takedown. It's a little bit more predictable than anything. So I'm going to go Tom Aspinall here. I think he lands some good shots down the middle on Sergei Pavlovich, keeps a decent range here. He's a lot heavier than he's been fighting at before. Like, he came in against Marcin Tybura as a pretty heavy guy, a little bit more leaned out muscle-wise, and actually did pretty decent in that fight. So he's not going to be as fast as some of his earlier days, but again, he still has kept kind of that speed in his fight. So I think he's going to be able to be quicker than Sergei Pavlovich. I don't think the range of Sergei Pavlovich is going to help him here. I think Tom Aspinall is going to be able to look for some takedowns. If Sergei Pavlovich stuffs the takedowns of Tom Aspinall, I'm going to be like, oh shit, like this could get pretty rough for Aspinall in this fight, because Pavlovich, the way he's able to maintain range with some of his power shots, he saw it against Derek Lewis, against Tai Tuivasa. I know in that Curtis Blades fight, at a certain point, like I know I picked Sergei Pavlovich when that fight got announced, and I was actually getting really nervous in there because Curtis Blades was actually landing a couple of good shots down the middle against Sergei Pavlovich early on there, but Sergei Pavlovich kind of just tanked it and just started landing some really good punches on Curtis Blades. So I am going to go with Tom Aspinall by finish in the late first round. I think Sergei Pavlovich hasn't even left the first round in any of his UFC fights, so I don't think it happens here. Maybe it ends up in the second round, or maybe this one ends up to a decision. Wouldn't that be interesting? But all of his fights have ended in the first round in the UFC, like every single one of them. What is that, 7 or 8 fights? No, it is 7. This will be his 8th fight in the UFC. I'm just going to go Aspinall by submission, maybe like an arm triangle or something. Maybe he takes him down and then wins off a ground and pound. But I am going to go Tom Aspinall. 53% picked for Tapology here, 90% by TKO KO, 47% for Aspinall, 58% by submission. I think he probably wins this one by submission as well. I think he takes him down, if not ground and pound shots on Sergei, and he kind of just covers up. It's just a TKO thing. So I'm going to go not Sergei Pavlovich. I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall. I know Sergei Pavlovich has some decent sambo, and I think he's got a little bit of support from Khabib because he used to train at AKA or something like that, but I'm going to have to stick with Tom Aspinall for this prediction. If Sergei Pavlovich wins, I'm going to be super excited. Now, I don't know where exactly this leaves the division at because Jones is injured for at least 8 months, and so he would probably won't even fight for like another year. Stipe's out, so maybe you do Stipe versus Pavlovich and then have the winner fight Jones on the way back. I feel like that's what you kind of have to do. Just like force Jones to at least fight one of these young contenders. I think that's what I know it's a little bit, I won't say dirty, but I don't know how Jones would feel about it, because it would be kind of UFC like doing their moves, trying to get a young contender to fight John Jones. But again, wait, did I say Sergei Pavlovich? Tom Aspinall. If Tom Aspinall wins against Sergei Pavlovich or whatever, I think either one actually wins because that is an interim fight. I don't remember if I said Pavlovich or not, but force him to fight Stipe Miocic. Gone. You're gonna have to take another fight at some point. You actually don't deserve a title shot. Sorry to break that to you, but you don't. Do Stipe and then kind of forces John Jones when he comes back to unify the titles, fight a young contender, and I think actually Tom Aspinall does a decent job against them. That's for another time. This is the fight happening this weekend. I am going to go Tom Aspinall by submission. I'm going to be comfortable with a finish late in the first round. Again, Sergei Pavlovich, any of the Sergei Pavlovich's fights haven't left the first round, maybe in the second round, but I think in the early rounds it will definitely be a finish for sure. Of the card tournament main event, we have Yuri Prochazka versus Alex Pereira for the UFC vacant light heavyweight championship. I'm going to go with Alex Pereira. I think Yuri Prochazka is very open on the feet, and I think the fact that he isn't on, or at least that he hasn't fought in a year and 4 months, is definitely going to be showing its toll here. He was on a pretty rough injury that they call like one of the worst shoulder injuries they've seen or whatever. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but It was a pretty rough injury. Hasn't fought in a year and 4 months, and with the style that Yuri Prochazka has, at least where he takes a lot of shots, kind of just goes with the movements. I think it's going to be pretty rough against a guy in Alex Pereira who has lethal punching power with that left hook and is a pretty good kickboxer in his own right. So maybe Yuri Prochazka is just really good against Brazilians and just KOs Alex Pereira in this fight, which could definitely happen because Yuri Prochazka just kind of finds ways to win fights. I think I said Glover was going to beat Yuri Prochazka. Yeah, for sure. I think I said Glover was going to beat Yuri Prochazka and just kind of see where that fight goes. But they're both pretty open on their feet. Like, we can't say that Yuri Prochazka is super open on their feet. I know his style kind of leaves it open a little bit more because he definitely uses his head a little bit more. But Alex Pereira's hands are down. Like, let's be real. If Alex Pereira misses one of his strikes, like, Yuri Prochazka could definitely land with the left hook himself and hurt Alex Pereira. This is a light heavyweight division. Alex Pereira isn't going to be cutting as much weight. Maybe he did gain a little bit more weight, so he does have a little bit of an advantage in this fight. Maybe he goes for some offensive grappling. Like, we never really know because Yuri Prochazka gotten taken down by Glover, which is kind of a given. Glover's a very good mixed martial artist, like good on the feet, good on the ground, but really known for his submission skills. Dominic Reyes, I believe, was able to take him down. Volkan Ozdemir, that fight ended pretty early, but Yuri Prochazka isn't that great on the ground. So I think Alex Pereira, who is a black belt in jiu-jitsu, is he a brown belt or a black belt? Might be working on some takedowns here in this fight. So maybe Alex Pereira is going to take him down and try to go for a submission. We'll see how this one goes. I am going to go with Alex Pereira in this fight. I just don't like that Yuri Prochazka, basically a year and what, 4 months, 5 months off, rough shoulder injury, might look a little bit slower, is going to be a little bit rusty in there against a guy in Alex Pereira who's very active. 2 months ago, well, was that 4 months ago now, that he fought against Jamall, which won that one split decision at altitude as well. Lost to Israel Adesanya, but 6 months before then, and then 10 months before then, a year and 4 months. Like, he's extremely active. A year and 7 months before. So, I mean, just between fights, 3 to 4 months is really his downtime after those fights. So I like that Alex Pereira is pretty active in this fight. Yuri Prochazka is just not, and it's not like his own fault, like he was injured, but I just think that's going to benefit Alex Pereira a lot more. But again, Yuri Prochazka can definitely find a way to win this fight. There's like an elbow or something, like a lead elbow. You can definitely catch Alex Pereira in this fight. Maybe he goes for takedowns of his own. You never know. Like, he submitted Glover, and it's just one of those things maybe in MMA where some guys just can't beat other guys. And you saw what Dominic Cruz with Team Alpha Male for a while. Maybe Yuri Prochazka just has Team Glover's number or something, if that's what you want to base it off of. But of course, Yuri has a very solid chance here. But again, the injury from Yuri Prochazka is just, I don't think it's going to benefit him here. So I'm going to go with Alex Pereira by KO. TKO in the second or third round here. I think he ends up catching Yuri Prochazka with a lead hook, or not a lead hook, a left hook. Yuri Prochazka is just kind of going to go for a strike, going to miss. He's going to be wide open for the shot, and I think he just ends up getting caught. So I'm going to go with Alex Pereira here by TKO KO in the second or third round in this matchup. 58% picked by Tapology, 88% by TKO KO, 42% picked for Prochazka in this matchup, 67% picked by KO. I'm going to go with Alex Pereira in this one. It wins the light heavyweight champion and puts his name up there with some of the best combat sports athletes of all time. Let me know what you guys think about this matchup down below. Who do you guys have winning? And I'll see you guys next time.